President Reagan called me Mitch O'Donnell. Close enough, I thought. My wife Elaine and I got married on President Reagan's birthday, February 6th. It's probably not the most romantic thing to admit, but Reagan meant a lot to both of us. For 31 years, Elaine has been the love of my life, and I'm eternally grateful to have her by my side. I think back to my first days in the Senate with deep appreciation for the time that helped shape my view of the world. I'm unconflicted about the good within our country and the irreplaceable role we play as the leader of the free world. It's why I worked so hard to get the national security package passed earlier this month. Believe me, I know the politics within my party at this particular moment in time. I have many faults. Misunderstanding politics is not one of them. That said, I believe more strongly than ever that America's global leadership is essential to preserving the shining city on a hill that Ronald Reagan discussed. For as long as I'm drawing breath on this earth, I will defend American exceptionalism. So as I've been thinking about when I would deliver some news to the Senate, I always imagined a moment when I had total clarity and peace about the sunset of my work. A moment when I'm certain I have helped preserve the ideals I so strongly believed. That day arrived today. My goals when I was narrowly elected to the Senate back in 1984 were fairly modest. Do a good job for the people of Kentucky and convince them that by doing so they might rehire me for a second term. That was it. That was the plan. If you would have told me 40 years later that I would stand before you as the longest-serving Senate leader in American history, frankly, I would have thought you'd lost your mind. I have the honor of representing Kentucky in the Senate longer than anyone else in our state's history. I just never could have imagined that happening when I arrived here in 1984 at 42. I'm filled with heartfelt gratitude and humility for the opportunity. But now it's 2024. I'm now 82. As Ecclesiastes tells us, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. To serve Kentucky in the Senate has been the honor of my life. To lead my Republican colleagues has been the highest privilege. But one of life's most underappreciated talents is to know when it's time to move on to life's next chapter. So I stand before you today, Mr. President, and my colleagues, to say this will be my last term as Republican leader of the Senate. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. However, I'll complete my job my colleagues have given me until we select a new leader in November and they take the helm next January. I'll finish the job the people of Kentucky hired me to do as well, albeit from a different seat, and I'm actually looking forward to that. So it's time for me to think about another season. I love the Senate. It's been my life. There may be more distinguished members of this body throughout our history, but I doubt there were any with any more admiration for the Senate. After all this time, I still get a thrill walking into the Capitol, and especially on this venerable floor, knowing that we, each of us, have the honor to represent our states and do the important work of our country. But Father Time remains undefeated. I'm no longer the young man sitting in the back, hoping colleagues would remember my name. It's time for the next generation of leadership. As Henry Clay said in this very body in 1850, the Constitution of the United States was not made merely for the generation that then existed, but for posterity, unlimited, undefined, endless, perpetual posterity. So time rolls on. There'll be a new custodian of this great institution next year. I won't surprise you to know I intend to turn this job over to a Republican majority leader. I have full confidence in my conference to choose my replacement and lead our country forward. There'll be other times to reminisce. I'm immensely proud of the accomplishments I've played some role in obtaining for the American people. Today is not the day to discuss all of that, because as I said earlier, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. There are many challenges we must meet to deliver for the American people, and each will have my full effort and attention. I still have enough gas in my tank to thoroughly disappoint my critics, and I intend to do so with all the enthusiasm with which they become accustomed. So to my colleagues, thank you for entrusting me with our success. It's been an honor to work with each of you. There'll be plenty of time to express my gratitude in greater detail as I sprint towards the finish line, which is now in sight. I yield the floor.
Standing ovation there on the Senate floor, and we've all just witnessed an historic moment as Senator Mitch McConnell, the longest-serving Senate leader in American history, announces he's stepping down from his position as minority leader come November. A consequential moment there where he spoke about his career and even had a comment that jumped out at me as being humorous, which you don't always hear from Mitch McConnell, where he says he still has enough gas in his tank to disappoint his critics.
Yeah, I wrote that one down, too. A little moment of levity in this. McConnell said that he believes, quote, America's global leadership is essential. The 82-year-old says serving Kentucky in the Senate has been the honor of his life. He was first elected back in 1984. He's the longest-serving Republican, or actually, he's the longest-serving speaker at all, or leader of any conference in the Senate's history. He was elected 9 times to lead the Republicans there. He says that a new leader will be selected in November and that he isn't going to leave his seat before his term ends in 2027. CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian is there on Capitol Hill for us. Nicole, some breaking news. We were talking with you, obviously, when the news first came down. What jumped out at you from the minority leader's remarks?
Well, I think if anything, he realized his time is due, you know, and even though he said he still has gas left in his tank, he also noted that he recently turned 82 and that he feels that it is now the time for him to step down, that he has made that decision, because certainly when we look at a lot of leaders here in the Senate, some of whom are octogenarians, just like the leader, there has kind of been this pervasive question about age and when is a good time to step down, some making that decision to continue serving, as we saw in the case of the late Dianne Feinstein, up until her death. But in this instance, you have a leader, McConnell, saying, look, I've had a good run. It's time for a new generation of leaders, and kind of making that move to pass the torch to a younger generation of leadership, which again is part of a broader debate that we are even seeing now in presidential politics as well. And as we know, for any politician and any person, it is their decision to make and their decision alone. But certainly, as you heard from the leader there, he was laying out his reasoning for why he felt that this was a good time for him to step down. Still in awe, though, of the U.S. Capitol, as he said, that he still gets excited every time he comes into this building, every time he steps onto the floor, and that he does intend to fulfill his duty to serve out the rest of his term. He said there are still a lot of pressing issues at hand, and also to fulfill the duties of his constituents in the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
And Nicole, I have to say, I'm in awe at the remark he made about when he was elected to the Senate in 1984. That means he's been there all or most of my lifetime. And his impact on the American legal landscape is difficult to measure because it is so immense, particularly when you consider his impact on who now sits on the Supreme Court and their consequential decisions. What, in your view, stands out as some of his most impactful decisions?
Well, certainly he made history when he was first elected, was one of the first Republicans to win statewide in Kentucky in some 20 years when he was elected back in 1984. And he quickly did move up in the ranks in the U.S. Senate. But obviously, probably that most pivotal part of his tenure was this time where he served during kind of in the interim between the Obama administrations and the Trump administrations, where you had that very critical opening on the Supreme Court, and then President Barack Obama nominated Merrick Garland, who is now the Attorney General, but at the time was a judge. And in effect, McConnell blocked that nomination from going forward. And that really was to the ire of many Democrats, some of whom are still, potentially upset about that move. And then when we saw former President Trump win in 2016, not only was the former president able to fill that vacancy with Neil Gorsuch, but then was able to add two more conservative justices to the bench in Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett. And, if you'll remember with some of those proceedings, particularly Amy Coney Barrett, I mean, they were very swift, took place in, I think her nomination took place in less than a month from the time that she was nominated to the confirmation hearings. And that in large part was due not only to the Judiciary Committee, but also to leaders like McConnell, who kind of cleared that path, enabling these nominations to move forward very swiftly. So that being said, it certainly is one of the cornerstones of his legacy here on Capitol Hill, among many things.
Right, and it's one that he is one of the ones that he's most proud of. He has said that before. It's also on his Senate bio as the first real accomplishment specifically that he celebrates. But real quick, Nicole, we saw Susan Collins, the senator from Maine, sitting behind him smiling. Any word as to who may succeed Mitch McConnell?
Well, the answer is the three Johns, which has kind of been, what has been whispered here in the halls of Congress over these last several months and to a certain extent last several years. And if you're wondering who those three Johns may be, I'm referencing John Cornyn of Texas, John Barrasso of Wyoming, who is currently the Senate GOP conference chairman, and John Thune, who is the Senate GOP whip. All of them them have obviously been in positions of Senate leadership, and they, at this point in time, seem to be the potential candidates to possibly succeed Leader McConnell. And so we have seen, while many of them have tried to stay on the same page as the leader and to show him deference and respect, we do know that there have been conversations about, who may eventually succeed the leader, and certainly all of these three contenders have been trying to build support among the conference, albeit very quietly.
Yeah, certainly one of the most consequential positions in all of the country. Nicole Killian, thank you.
Thank you, Nicole.
We're going to take a quick break, but the news obviously continues. So stay with us. You're streaming CBS News.
Original documentary from CBS reports tensions rising between a powerful country and a vital island.
The supply of this technology came grinding to a halt. The world would grind to a halt.
Absolutely.
As Taiwan faces threats and aggression,
Taiwan is on the front line, and we understand our responsibility as a democracy. We cannot fall.
CBS News examines whether they can defend themselves.
Putin, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, there are manifestations of the battle between autocracy and democracy. And that is a fight that we're all engaged in.
Defending Taiwan, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We love music as much as you do. CBS Mornings.
Your morning routine just got better.
I love that.
CBS Mornings.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this.
What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why? You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that? Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
This really
Is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean?
What does that mean? Did any of that make sense? What's your response?
What happened? Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Morning news matters because it sets the tone for your day, and it's a way of getting you started.
We take you places, teach you new things, and we make you feel like, it's not all bad. We're going to uplift you.
People say to me, you always seem to be having a good time. I mean, you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
When weather turns extreme.
A massive storm with winds of 150 miles per hour.
The storm strengthened again overnight.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real, you'll have time to get prepared. Feel the forecast. Weather when it matters most on CBS News.
I wake up every morning asking what's happening in the world, why is this happening, and how do we answer that question? After the tragic loss of beloved newsman Tim Russert, his son went on a worldwide journey to find himself.
I struggled with his grief for a long time.
How Luke Russert is honoring the legacy of his father when we go person to person.
Well, we want to take you back over to Alabama, where people are gathering today at the state capitol to rally against the state Supreme Court's controversial ruling on IVF and frozen embryos.
That's right. The all-Republican court ruled frozen embryos should be considered children under state law, and therefore someone can be held liable for destroying them. Demonstrators in Montgomery are putting pressure on lawmakers to advance new legislation to protect people's access to IVF. Several medical facilities in the state have suspended